Happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. We're all cheersing you. I've got my handy mason jar, and I'm still minus a computer, so Holly's actually running the show. Holly, what's your drink? What are you drinking on?
I have something new that I just threw together and tried for the first time. It's a raspberry flavored vodka with
Ooh!
diet grape soda, and it tastes amazing.
So wait, raspberry vodka and diet
Raspberry
grape soda.
flavored vodka, and this is a diet grape soda like Shasta or something. And
Ooh.
it tastes so good. I can't believe it. It tastes like a candy or something.
I'm going to have to try it now. This sounds like a low-cal drink that I should be drinking instead of my Chardonnay. That's
It's
lots of
very
calories.
sweet.
But it's not. It's sweet, but it's not. The
It doesn't taste like alcohol. It's one of those things you have to be careful not to drink too much. It's so tasty.
Gotcha. Well, we've never been guilty of drinking too much. That doesn't happen here on Wednesday. But hello, everyone. How are you all? Hope you're having a fabulous week. Hope your seahorses are doing well. Your tanks are swimmingly fabulous. And yeah, that's all the words I have for the intro. That was it. Welcome. I see Shyla. I see Zen Ginger. And as more people jump in, we welcome you. Let us know what you're drinking in the comments. Tonight is open chat, and Holly is running the show, but I'm a blabbermouth, so I'm just blabbing. My sound's cracking?
Yeah, you're a little crackly sounding
Okay,
again.
hang on. Let me try to fix it. You guys let me know. I will have. Let me say this too.
Now I can't hear you.
I'm not better.
Now you're better. Now
Okay.
you sound good.
All right. This will probably go south again, and I'll have to change it. I'm working on a 2013-year-old MacBook Pro, so not going well. That's why Holly's running the show. And come next week, my new computer will be here. So we will be back on schedule. But if I start cracking or start, looking wanky, just let me know, guys. I can already see the delay. It sucks, but it is what it is, right? So I want to hear how your weeks have gone, how your tanks are doing. Tonight is just open chat. Been a busy week, so we didn't have a guest planned or a topic. If you missed last week, go back and check it out because we did a lot of fun things where not only did we share videos and pictures and talk about our actual tanks, but then Chris Carey joined. If you started with us last week and then you left, go back and watch the end because Chris Carey joined and gave us kind of a tour of what he's doing right now. If you don't know who Chris Carey is, I just feel sorry for you. You should know who Chris Carey is. But he's amazing, and he gave us a tour and talked to us about seahorses some. So go back, watch last week. The only other real announcement, am I cracking again, you guys?
No, you're fine.
Okay. All right. Only other announcements is I have my vacation from work coming up. And so I will be working on getting shirts like these. Let's see if I can show it. This is my Who's Your Mama shirt. And it's got let me see if this works better. I'm sorry, I'm on a delay. So it says, Who's Your Mama? It's got the male seahorse rolling his eyes and a lot of babies around him. And the woman looking at him like, I got more eggs for you. So lots of cute shirts coming out if you're interested in seahorse gear. Holly, I think you're wearing a seahorse shirt too, right?
I am. I'm wearing my one from Macna. If you can see it, the Seriously Seahorse and Pipefish. I think I won that.
Yeah.
I want to say, I think I did. It's been a couple years, so hard to remember, but I think I won a few prizes at the Macnas online.
Okay, do I need to go change clothes to participate?
If you want to fit in, Cheryl, you're going to have to buy a seahorse shirt once I get it available, right?
I've got several seahorse shirts that I love. And the thing is, I don't wear them all the time because I love them so much. I don't want to wear them out.
Well, just wear them for Wine Wednesdays.
Well, I got to say this, I got to say this. And I mean, I obviously don't make these shirts, right? So I've got a company doing it for me. But I am seriously impressed. Like, I'm not trying to be too upcoming here, but look at this. This is a shirt that's like over a year old. I mean, it's really good quality. I'm serious. I'm gonna try to take a picture later and show you guys better. But I mean, the female, the design on her is ridiculous. I mean, and this is after multiple washings, multiple wears. Zen Ginger's wearing a t-shirt that does not fit. but I'm just saying, I when I do get the website finally going and the t-shirts going, I'm choosing quality, right? So if you buy a shirt, I will let you know, hey, this is the cheaper version, and don't wash it so many times. But this one was just the average, and I'm really impressed with the quality. So.
Hey, I can go change shirts.
Yeah, you can if you want, Cheryl. But that is upcoming, just to let you know. And also, I did want to share something real quick that I started doing, because I told you guys, as I get into doing the website and providing more actual education and articles and such, I'm also working on the YouTube channel. So, Holly, if you can help me to share this real
I can. Let's see, there you are.
All right. Can you guys see what I'm seeing?
Yes.
All right. So if you go to the Seahorse Whisperer site, which look at that, 3.6 thousand subscribers. Thank you so much.
Nice.
All of you. And most of the videos are really old and need updated, and I'm working on it. But I started doing these shorts. And look at this. I was just shocked. Like, some of these only have a few views.
Oh, wow.
But some of them got 2,000 views. This is just in I just did this this week, and 1,000 views. And some of them are really cute. I thought this one was cute. So just go check out the shorts is what I'm saying. But
very cool. Aw.
I was going to be smarty and say, are those pipes?
Oh, I gave him a nip. Aw. Poor guy.
Okay, so but the point is, I mean, that's kind of silly or whatever, but the point is we're getting comments. Like, I never seen an animal like that. It's so cool. And where you at? It was, whatever. But we're getting comments. We're getting interest from people that aren't necessarily, the community. We're here for the community, obviously, but it's kind of cool that these shorts bring people in. I want to play a couple more. This is a really old one. That I need to redo this one, but I've got seahorses giving birth. Maybe it takes a second, guys. So.
Oh, you're crackling again.
Oh no! Here we go.
Oh. Look at her just admiring him. Say, I see you looking at me.
so okay, we know seahorse behavior, but other people don't. This is one of my favorites. This only got 55 views. You guys go view it. Here we go. Let's see if we can see this one. She loves herself.
Yeah, Sadie does that. Sadie,
they're looking for a mate.
Herself.
She's admiring herself and loving herself.
Sadie does that, and I think it's because Dandy, he can't swim like that. But she's been doing something interesting the past few days. She teases him, and she's trying to get him to chase her.
Okay, stop sharing.
Play with him.
Holly. Here we go. I'll stop sharing. Okay, go on.
You're all crackly too. Your voice again.
All right, I'll fix it again.
Crackly. But yeah, so she keeps teasing him and trying to get him to chase her. And he tries, but he doesn't get very far. So then she ditches him and goes to eat. She keeps doing this like at meal times. Like she'll flirt with him when he's trying to eat and get him distracted. And then he tries to go after her and ends up spilling all the food. And she just swims away and then goes to her own dish and sits down to eat.
No
We
answers on
at
that
the
one.
desk.
She's
It's
frustrated.
like a game.
Well, anyways, you can see right now how these little shorts between us seahorse people spark conversation about what's going on with our seahorses and your seahorses. And it also gets people who don't even know about seahorses to be like, oh, I didn't know seahorses did that. So they're
Seahorses
cool.
are real.
Yeah, right. So my point is support the channel, go like the videos and the shorts, please. And yeah. So again, tonight's open chat, it's just, whatever you guys want to talk about, we're here to talk about it. The only updates I have, no babies, unfortunately, still, but I see more courting as usual. And I would say the one thing I've noticed lately about my tank, since Holly just shared, is that my seahorses are getting impatient for me, right? Because I'm on this wacky schedule where I used to turn the lights on at a certain time, turn them off at a certain time, feed them at a certain time. But now that currently I work 2 first shifts, 1 mid shift, and then 2 second shifts, right? So I'm all across the board
Oh, yeah.
and I need to feed the seahorses on my schedule, which they're not used to. And
Mhm.
so when it's like a second shift day for me, I've noticed I'll come home, the lights are off because I don't have it on a timer anymore because I want them to eat when I want them to eat. And they're swimming around acting like it's party time in the dark, which,
Mhm.
they've got daylight coming in and such, but
Mhm.
they are not about waiting for me. And they're like, where's our food? What's going on? We want our schedule back. But I mean, and it's working out. So I'm just curious if any of you guys out there that are keeping seahorses, do you have them on a wacky schedule and how do they react? Because mine are.
If you do that, one of the things you can do is light one side of the tank or a small section of the tank, assuming that it's dark out and they haven't been fed, and put food into the lighted area, and you can watch them move in and out and feed into the light, into the dark, and they seem very comfortable doing that. I've run into that before.
Now, what do you mean? I want to dive
Okay,
in deeper.
go in, turn on a small light.
Wait, in
that
what
only lights up.
circumstance, Cheryl? In what circumstance?
Wait, repeat that.
In what, sorry, I've got background noise because this computer can't handle my AirPods either. But in what circumstance would you use the method you're just.
Okay, if I used to work 12-hour plus days for years, and my schedule was always changing. So what I would do is if I get home late, I'd just turn on one light, a small light, on one corner of the tank and feed them. And that way I didn't basically freak everybody else by all of a sudden giving them bright light
Yeah.
or misfeeding, but it gave them the option then to wake up and go over and consume food.
So two
I've had to
questions
do
on that.
stuff like that lately too, because I went hiking and left real early the other morning. Some of my days are mixed up. So I was up an hour early, wanted the seahorses to eat an hour early. So I turned on ambient light in the room so they'd have low light. Their light wasn't on, but they'd see me doing stuff and know when it's time to wake up. But even still, like I gave them maybe 15, 20 minutes and then, start turning on their dawn, their lights. It's time to eat. But they were sleepy. It took them a while to come around and then they didn't eat much. They ate some. And then it was time for me to clean up and get ready to go. And of course, by that time, it was their normal eating time. And then they were like, where's the food?
Right.
Mom? Time to eat now.
So couple comments, questions, whatever, however you want to say it. Number one, I have absolutely noticed that you can't turn on a light and feed seahorses. They have to wake up. They need a minute to get themselves together, get ready for eating, or just, wake up, right? You don't want to think of yourself. You don't want to wake
They're
up
not
and
morning people.
right. So that's part of it is that I want to turn the light on when I get home and give them time to wake up. But weirdly enough, lately my seahorses are up. They're
They're
up.
already
They're not playing.
Yeah.
They're ready for food. So that's one thing. But also, Cheryl, I love what you're talking about, leaving a light on in a corner and feeding them there. But the thing is, I feel like they need their day, right? So if my day's off and like one day I turn the lights on at 8 and it goes off at 8 or whatever, and then the next day I'm not home until 1 or whatever, I'm just saying I still try to give them the same amount of time of light, not just for eating, but for playing, someday giving me fry, and like having activity, because I would feel bad just turning on the light, feeding them, and turning it off, right? I mean, maybe just for one day, but
Well, the other thing you can do is use a different colored light. I found that, like, when I was getting off really late, turning on a bright light was not cool. They all looked like they were blinded. But if I used a blue light, they'd come out and feed,
Mine will
which was
eat in
much better.
moonlight. I can feed mine in the moonlight setting where it's blue.
Yeah.
So maybe leave them on a light schedule closest to what works with all your schedules.
Well, the thing is, if they're already asleep and you suddenly turn on all your lighting, they're not going to be happy. I wouldn't be happy.
find that to be true in the mornings, but like I said, when I'm coming home in the evening and I've worked second or I'm getting off late or whatever, they're already up, even though the light's not on. So I could turn the light on at 10 o'clock at night, leave it on until 8 o'clock in the morning, and then turn it off, and they'd be active that whole time. But then the next day they'd be kind of confused. When are we supposed to get up? Right? They
Yeah.
don't. So anybody who doesn't have this scheduling problem, put your seahorses on a schedule. They like it better. It works better. They know what to expect. Things are just better. But anybody in this circumstance, I'm just finding that it's interesting, because if I try to bright light them in the morning, they're not having it. They don't know what to do. If I throw food in, they're not going to eat it because they're not awake yet. But when I come home later, they are up. They're already up, even though the light's not on. And they don't care if I turn the bright light on. In fact, they're ready for me. They're like, slam the glass. Mom, over here.
Yeah.
Turn the light on.
They're
Feed us.
working for you.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. There's no point to what I'm talking about. I'm just talking. But
Well, are they more used to you being up and around at that time, though?
I mean, I am a night
Compared to
bird.
everything else?
Yeah.
Because maybe that's part of it. That's why
Maybe.
when you're on that schedule, that's more what they're used to. So they're more.
Yeah. Remember that they're hunters, and as such, depending on when food comes in, is going to have a big impact on how they respond. I've watched very young fry turn on a little micro bulb and give them food when I was late coming in. And you can watch them dart in and out and harvest food because they're hungry, but they're not too sure about the lighting, but they're still feeding. And that's what you want to get, is them actively feeding and stimulate them to move into a little more light.
Gotcha.
But when I say a little more light, I mean I keep it very low when I have to do.
And
I
that
don't
might
have to
be
do
it too, Cheryl. I'm glad you said that, because I have my light. I do have a light over the tank, a reef light, but I have it dimmed so low
Yeah.
that maybe when I turn it on, maybe they're waking up and being active because of the light from the windows, because they don't get much light, period. Does that make sense? Like I don't turn on bright lights ever for their tank. So maybe that's it. I don't know.
Well, and it's even like when you have a male that's about ready to deliver or newborn fry. Oh, I used to set my alarms to get up at 3 a.m. I would get up, basically turn off some of the filtration and increase the lighting slightly. Normally, if I got up at 3, they would deliver before dawn.
Mhm.
And it was basically, in essence, I was manipulating them using the light.
Gotcha. I mean, and I know there are tricks to do that. Hey, speaking of males, I've noticed something very interesting about my male from Vincent, which I need to, actually stick to their names. I keep calling them different things. But, anyways, I noticed that we were talking last week about behaviors and personalities. This male, like, doesn't care for other seahorses. He's a loner, right? He'll, if he's bugged enough, he'll flirt with the girls. If the male wants to tussle, he will. But even when I'm feeding, so the reason I'm telling this is I'm just asking you guys, do you have, okay, just tell me, Holly, if my sound gets messed
I'll
up.
send
Can
you a
fix it?
message. Yeah.
Yep. Hang on. Let me try to fix it again. Is that better?
Talk again.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Sorry, guys. But I'm just curious if we talked about seahorse personality and behavior last week, but if you have certain seahorses that just like to do their own thing. I mean, he will do the seahorse actions. He'll flirt. He'll tussle. He'll eat with them. But I've noticed there have been times where I have to, kind of like Holly does, feed him in a corner because he'll not go eat because the seahorses are rambunctious and jumping, and he just doesn't seem he seems antisocial, right?
Mhm.
So is that just personality? I mean,
I mean, that's how Dandy is, but I think it's because he has his problems with his motor skills, so he can't interact the way the other seahorses do. So
well,
he does keep to himself most of the time, but he still likes company. He's always liked if another seahorse, like now I just have him and Sadie in that tank.
right.
But before then, when I had other seahorses, he didn't mind if Candy or Scrappy Doo or any other seahorse came to sit with him or eat a meal with him. As long as, like you said, they weren't getting rambunctious with him. He likes company, but it has to be calm company.
Maybe that's it. I don't know. And I mean, he's like I said, he still flirts. He's an amazing seahorse. He has no problems, no motor skill issues. He just
He
seems to
doesn't
like
want to hang out with the others.
he wants his own space. Curious
Yeah.
if any of you guys have that issue. Also, a note. I saw this come up in my calendar. I know you mentioned it the other day, Holly, so I'm wondering if I have the wrong date. Because I have Aphrodite's. Can you guys see that or no?
Oh, I can't. But you want to know her birthday?
No, I have it. I have it
Do
as
you?
October 26th, 2023, and she will be 3.
Yeah, let me see. Yeah, October 26th of 20 was when she was born.
Yep.
So she's going to be 3.
Yep. So I've got her birthday on my calendar. I'm going to have to do
Candy
special.
just turned 3. Or not Candy. Sadie just turned 3. And Scrappy Doo would have been 3 on Sunday, last Sunday, but he passed.
Right.
Earlier. So,
Right.
but yeah, that batch, their birthday's October 26th. And I
Well,
think that was the one that was born, though, over 2 days. It took 2 days for all of them to be born. So
right.
I don't actually know who's who exactly. But they started October 26th was when he started giving birth.
Got
I've seen that happen with a deliberate, what we call it, warning fry.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day they deliver the mother load.
Yes.
And I've seen that happen, particularly in young males, like their first time or
Mm-hmm.
very early on in their development.
Really?
They don't quite.
That's interesting to me because my biggest male that gave me all the best fry, he gave me a warning fry every time. Every single time, even in old age.
Yeah,
Scrappy
it can happen.
Doo did not. with his, and he was in labor all day. I remember it was a Sunday, and he was in labor all day, and he just kept having a few here and there throughout the day. And I think he ended having about 20 that day. And then the next morning, he had like 100 and some.
Yeah. And the thing is, large mature males, I've had them pop out several hundred fry in a matter of 15, 20 minutes. I pulled them out, put them in the nursery system. They delivered, put them back in the adult tank within 15 minutes, and they were done.
Mm.
Depends on the seahorse.
Sure.
Depends on their age and their basically their conditioning.
Right, and yeah, we could do a whole episode on conditioning seahorses to have better fry. But Holly, and this is the case. I'm asking. I'm trying to follow. But so this is the case where the handicapped seahorses were in the batch, or no?
No.
Okay.
I had Dandy was actually one of my first seahorses. He has no fry. He never had fry. So he's going on 5 years old. I've had him the longest.
Amazing.
And then like I want to say 6 months later, see, I lost his mate in an accident in the aquarium.
Right.
And then that's when I got Candy and Sandy
Gotcha.
from
Okay.
the same source. And those two had babies right away. They were, I think, 5 months old, I think is the typical age, 5 or 6 months old when they came to me. And they were having babies within like 3 weeks. They had
Sure.
their first batch.
Sure.
Sandy never did have any babies.
Gotcha. Okay, Zen Ginger had a question for us to kind of steer into questions. Can you put it up, Holly? Oh, you
Yeah,
are.
I
Sorry.
did. So
I would
Zen
like to know-
Gingers.
Oh, go ahead,
Are you
Holly.
gonna read it? So, your sound is messed up again too. Maybe you could fix that while I'm reading. So, I would like to know if y'all have any beginner do's and don'ts for refugiums in seahorse tank sumps. Size or ratio of the sump, what's in it, what not to put in there, special lighting, etc. I'll let you answer because I've never had a refugium, honestly.
So, okay, let me think. Cheryl, you want to go first while I think it?
Well, the thing is, I build my own sumps, and because I've gotten real picky, and most of the stuff that I find commercially really doesn't work. I use 29-gallon tanks. In the first chamber, I have a filter sock, 100-micron filter sock. In the next chamber, I typically have a skimmer that's rated for at least 3 times the total water volume. So in a medium-sized tank, I'm looking at a skimmer rated for 180 gallons.
You wanted to know about refugiums, though. Have you kept
You
a
do
refugium?
refugiums, Cheryl?
There are, but they're farther along in the system.
Ah,
And then after I go through the mechanical filtration, that's when I move into rubble rock. In other words, a refugium type of system. That's where I use. I don't use it anymore, but I used to use different types of chemical modifiers, purgins, stuff like that in them. And then the last chamber is basically for pumps.
okay. So
That's your sump, though, not a refugium. I think she
Right.
wants to know about
It's
refugium.
not truly a refugium system, but I found that it works very, very well
sure.
for what I
Oh no,
want.
you're giving great advice, Cheryl. But if you want a refugium situation, I get that that's kind of a different question. So, hey, Salty Reef, how are you? Salty can tell you some do's and don'ts about refugiums too, but I'm going to give you my 2 cents. And here it is. It depends. Everything always depends, unfortunately. So if you give a specific situation and say, should I put this in here? I can answer that clearly. To give you a basic overall of my opinion, I would say I steer clear of caleras, and that's only because they tend to go sexual and they tend to get back up into the tank. If you already, but again, that depends. If you already have it in your tank and that's the kind of tank you have, it doesn't matter. But I've just had cases where anything in from a scrubber to a refugium, you got to be careful with your sections and with the macros that you keep, as far as not letting it get back up into the tank and explode and take over the tank, if that's not the kind of tank you're keeping. And that goes for a scrubber too. I had that happen with my scrubber. I ended up with hair algae everywhere, right? So I had to make adjustments in just how the sump was set up so that the refugium was more of a separate entity within, if that makes sense. Another tip would
Yeah.
be another tip would be if you're gonna do a refugium, do fast growing macros, not pretty macros, that you don't need any crazy extensive light for. Yes, I know there's 5 million different refugium lights on the market. If you want them, go for it. I'm not saying they don't work, but I'm also going to say, like, for my personal, special made scrubber, which isn't a refugium, but we're talking macros in the sump, is what I'm guessing you're asking about. And in that case, it's a system where the lights literally on the sides of the tank and they go directly on the scrubber. I would do that with the refugium too. And in my reef tank with the refugium, I had a shop light that literally, I mean, you could tell that it just went over the refugium. In fact, if I started getting algae growing on the sides or in the next chamber, I would black it out, whether it be by covering it or putting black tape or something. But you got to be careful with lighting because it's going to grow algae, right? And that's what you're trying to do in the refugium, but you don't want it growing in the other compartments or, other compartments. Salty Reef said, in my opinion, a successful refugium should be at least 10% the size of the main display. Lighting is a whole discussion, right? Cato, with a simple standard freshwater light worked well for you, and you would run it. Miracle Mud, right? See, that's the thing. You can jump in. I think that's like an entire day's topic or an entire Wine Wednesday topic.
There's a
Because
lot to
yeah, because it just depends on what you want to do. If you can do a true refugium, my reef had miracle mud, so many different macros, but the way I had my sump set up, it was kind of weird. It was literally the first compartment that came from the tank, right? Had the skimmer and this, that, and the other, and the sock and all that. I can't even remember. I think, oh, that's what it was. The middle compartment was the pump. And that sounds crazy, right? But I had it specially made where the pump teed off to where it went back up to the tank directly and also over into this third compartment, which was the refugium. And that kind of helped me avoid anything going back up into the tank because it had to recircle through the middle pump. I know I'm sounding confusing. I need to do a video and show you. But basically, it was a special situation. Crackly again. Okay. Sorry, guys. Next week will be better. But it was is this better? Am I better now? Am I better now? No?
I think so. Say something else.
Am I better now?
Yes.
Okay. Just keep telling me. I'm so sorry, guys. It's this computer. Next week.
Yep, now you're crackling again. It was better for a second.
Let me try. I'm trying, guys. It's this stupid. Better?
Yes.
Okay. So, and I'll shut up so I can stop crackling here in a second. But with refugiums, I think it's really a personal thing, right? And I don't mean to put off your question because it's a good question. I would have to like think it through and make a list of do's and don'ts because I know what you're asking. You're not asking for you have to do this. You're saying overall, like with the lighting, make sure that the lighting is specific to the area that the refugium's in so that it doesn't project lighting into where it's going to grow algae on the pump and cause you problems there. That's a don't, right? do's. Another don't would be specific macros. I'll make you a list. I'm going to make a list and think it through and come up with some basic answers to what you're asking. And then once you set up and you get your, if you do a refugium going, I can help you more specifically hone in on, okay, maybe don't do that, maybe do that, if that makes sense. Yeah, salty reef. Refugiums can be as simple or as complicated as you want. And I think I rambled on and got sidetracked, but in my reef, I had miracle mud and that the macros in that refugium, oh my gosh, grew like you wouldn't believe. And I did the reverse light cycle deal. I mean, I had everything going on the reef. I didn't really do that in the Seahorse tank. I used the reverse light cycle on the algae scrubber, but I don't think I did on the macro. When I say refugium, it depends on what you're talking about. Again, because when I did the refugium on the Seahorse tank in that room, I wanted it to be pretty. Like I wanted my macro tank and then my Seahorse tank and them to be connected. So it wasn't really a refugium. So it depends on what you want. Do you want it to be pretty? Do you want it to be a nutrient export? What are you looking for? And we'll go through that. I know I just rambled on endlessly. Sorry. Am I cracking again yet? Shut me
Yeah.
up. All right.
My biggest concern with adding macro to a tank is hitchhikers. And
Sure.
I'm fanatical about when I do bring in anything that can carry hitchhikers, it's going in a completely seahorse free tank for a number of months before I consider using it, which gets really old after a while because how many people have found bristle worms, all kinds of crap after adding macro? And I'm very, very cautious when it comes to that.
Salty Reef said, maybe some week you're free, we can do a stream just on refugiums. Hey, let me know when, buddy. So glad to see you back. And Zen Ginger, you should join that week too, so we can really dive into some serious questions about a specific situation. So yeah, let's plan it. I'm game whenever you guys are free. But also, what Cheryl was just saying is true. And as I was talking about making sure that you set up to where the macros won't end up back into the tank, unless that's what you want, is really important because those hitchhikers can also end up back into the tank. So that's a whole
Yeah.
other topic about ensuring, buying clean macros or quarantining them yourself. I personally agree with you, Zen Ginger. I see the benefits in my own personal tanks. The ones that have worked the best have had macros in some part, whether it be in the tank, whether it be in a refugium, whether it be an algae scrubber. I've always had the best long-term luck when I use natural filtration, meaning
Yeah.
macro.
Don't get me wrong, macro is great. But when macro comes in, and the next thing you know is you have bristle worms
Sure.
and all kinds of other stuff, you've created a major problem for yourself because bristle worms and seahorses do not mix well.
Well, you can buy now aquacultured
Yeah.
macros, right, that are sterile and pest free.
I've been known to do that and finally gave up on that also because I still ran into problems with. I mean, spaghetti worms aren't a big deal. They're not really a negative, but I don't want stuff appearing in one of my tanks that came in on something
You're a
that wasn't
control
supposed
freak,
to be there.
Cheryl. You have to have control over all of it. No, and I get what you're saying, and especially if you're breeding, like that's the other thing. If you're trying to breed, that's different. Like I wouldn't put macros in a tank of adults that I was trying to breed. My tank right now is bare bone and not pretty, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to breed. Or a tank of fry. I did try to keep fry in a macro tank, and I had all sorts of problems, right? So
Well, I'm going to give you an example. A dear friend of mine who's got years of experience sent me what was supposed to be some copepods for a fry tank. Well, the next thing I knew, I had nasty little white two-pointed buggers.
Mm.
And limpets, they were killing my fry, literally.
Limpets?
And that came from a dear friend of mine.
Wait, limpets? Limpets?
Limpets?
It's limpets. Yeah. They were killing your fry?
They were grabbing them by the tails
Oh,
and holding on to them.
Are we talking about the same thing? The little round, or not round like, but
No, that's not limpets. I forget what they're called.
oh, okay.
The little
I
guys.
was like, I love limpets.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
The little guys that are white that have two appendages, rear appendages that stick out like little wires. They're not limpets.
You
What
got
are
me.
they? Anyway,
Anyway,
the thing is, what happens is it's so easy to introduce something
sure.
that you don't want that can kill seahorses or fry or both.
But
And you have to,
but let's differentiate between what you just said. So spaghetti, what are they called? Spaghetti stars.
they're
Those
worm. They're a worm.
Those are a big deal. You know, some of these things, hydroids even, are a huge deal if you're dealing with fry. If you're dealing with adult healthy seahorses, they don't matter at all. I mean, they do matter. I shouldn't say they don't matter at all, but it's not as big of a deal, right? So it just
Yeah.
depends on your risk tolerance, what you're willing to risk.
Well, that's my first question when somebody wants to get seahorses. Do you want to raise seahorses or do you just want to keep seahorses for your enjoyment?
Absolutely. And
Because the systems are going to be very, very different, and they're going to need to be modified to accommodate where you want to go with this.
absolutely agree. And Salty Reef, quarantine the macro, or you guys need a reputable, clean macro vendor.
Yes.
We're still waiting, Salty.
yeah.
Salty's going to be our vendor. We're waiting on you, buddy. But yeah, and I'll be honest with you, this is not a trick because I just got lucky, right? But my gorgeous macro tank that everybody raves about and that I absolutely adored, which was a lot of work, don't get me wrong, but it all started with tiny pieces of macro, right? That I grew. So I think, I don't know, like I said, maybe I just got lucky, but one of the methods of quarantine is you put macros in a tank, right? You grow it out a bit and then you snip the ends because the ends are less likely to have whatever. Not foolproof by all means. I'm not suggesting it, but I'm just saying when I started macros and multiple different macros in that tank, it was little snippets of macros from my girlfriends. I was in a ladies macro trading group or a ladies coral clubhouse, whatever. Anyways, we traded stuff. And so I ended up with all these little, like that big pieces of macro that I just learned what lighting they needed. Okay, I'm cracky again. All right. But I learned how to grow them. Let me fix this real quick.
One Salty Reef quarantine the macro, or you guys need a reputable, clean macro vendor.
That's what I just said,
And
Cheryl.
I have found some reputable, clean macro vendors and still found problems within my systems. And this is why my protocol is if I'm going to add macro to a tank, it's going to go through 6 months of quarantine before it ever enters one of my Seahorse tanks, just for that reason. Because you never know what's going to pop up.
Most people can't do that though. And I would say if you're
I know.
buying seahorses to breed them, absolutely you have a stricter quarantine method, you have a stricter overall tank. But in the average tank, I don't know where I got cut off. But bottom line, what I was saying is I had little pieces of macro that I grew myself, and I just never had any problems. And I had probably 25 different macros in that tank and never had problems.
I did an experiment years ago on, quote, clean macro.
Mm-hmm.
I first of all dipped it basically for salt water to remove anything on it. Then I put it through freshwater soaking. Then I moved it into a separate tank for grins to see what popped up. And I still had all kinds of different stuff coming up: spaghetti worms, hydroids, all kinds of stuff. And it blew my mind because I went through all these different processes to clean it up, and they still survived.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, Cheryl, is I think what I would say overall, this is just a blanket statement. I'm not telling anybody what to do. But again, going back to it depends on what you want out of the tank. And if you're more interested in having a gorgeous tank with gorgeous seahorses that you just have a beautiful tank versus breeding or whatever, that's what matters, because if you're looking for a gorgeous tank, you're going to be more interested in having a more natural ecosystem, right? In a breeding tank, in a fry tank, we can walk you through and explain how to make it extremely sterile. You're right. You're barely using live stuff. You're using more K1 and stuff like that to filter because you don't want anything getting in. Whereas sometimes in a tank where you're just keeping seahorses and you want macros and you want coral, you want the things that coral eat and you want the little bugs that kind of make the system go round. There's a whole
Mhm.
argument to be had on sterile versus natural, right? I mean, whole argument. And Zen Ginger said, what, Holly?
Are there not sterile tissue cultures for algae like that, or is it just not popular enough in the hobby yet?
There are. Cheryl is saying that she's had problems with that anyways. I haven't personally bought them, so I can't answer that. No, Salty, it's not just wild caught cleaned macro, not aquacultured. You're talking like, we won't say names, but there are supposedly raised in-house
Mm-hmm.
macros being sold. Cheryl says there's problems. I don't know. I can't speak to it because I haven't bought them.
Yeah, and the thing is, even if it's aquacultured, all it takes is one drop of water to contaminate it.
I know, but sometimes, Cheryl, I think we make it sound so big and scary. And the thing is, that's true for anything.
It's not scary. You just have to accept the fact that you have to pay attention
Yeah.
to what you've got.
Yeah, depends on what you want.
Okay.
You have to pay attention. I agree.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I've had spaghetti worms in seahorse tanks without any problem.
Or if you get amphipods, hey, that's a plus, right? I mean, if you
Yeah,
get
I was given a tank that was full of bubble algae. That was a pain.
Sure.
And then, of course, none of this was showing on the surface until I set it up and started working on it.
Sure.
And then I went, oh, man, take it down, take it outside, sterilize the tank, and start all over again.
See, but why? Why with bubble algae? Like I actually like bubble algae. I know I sound like a crazy lunatic, but I think it's cute.
But bubble algae takes over, will take over a tank, first of all, and very rapidly.
Okay.
And it dramatically reduces your O2 saturation.
I did
when
know
it's
that.
doing
I did know that part. Yeah. I've just never personally had it take over a tank. I've had it in tanks and I just manage it. And I like it. But
It looks cool, but it's definitely, and you can watch it if you put in zoos and stuff like that in the same tank. You can watch them. They'll blossom beautifully at first, and then you can watch them slowly start disintegrating as the O2 saturation deteriorates. I've done that experiment.
Gotcha. Zen Ginger said, that's why I was saying sterile ones, like the ones that are grown in lab conditions, like a lot of freshwater cultures. I didn't know if they were same or just from a reputable source. No, there's a difference. I'm sure there's a difference in both cases. I'm sure there are ones that are just cleaned, but there are also actual aquacultured, they grew them. But of course, I mean, they came from somewhere, right? They didn't grow them from a seed. They snipped something, cleaned it, and grew it. So there's always that chance. But I don't know. I want to have a whole Wine Wednesday debating sterile versus natural conditions. I really do. Because I've since I want to breed, I've been pro sterile for all this time, and I'm kind of going backwards. And I'm seeing the benefits of a more natural tank with a what's the word about the like the stuff on the glass? I can't even think of it. Salty, help me. What's that word? It's not biosphere. It's
Biofilm?
yeah, like the biofilm that feeds this little thing and that feeds that little thing, and it's this whole natural ecosystem that just works. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Oh, and Salty Reef is working on the clean macros for sure. Am I still doing okay, audio guys?
You're crackling again.
Okay, sorry.
Can
Next
still
week,
hear what you're saying, though. It just sounds crackling.
I
but
hear you.
We can still understand. At
Which
least I can.
And Salty
My
Reef
favorite
biome.
detector of all time, when I bought some live rock from somebody, and he sold it to me, and I was putting it in a Seahorse tank. And the next thing I knew, I had about a 3-inch, very large crab in the rock. Imagine what that could have done to some seahorses if I hadn't seen him.
Absolutely. Holly, I'm curious how you feel on this whole topic, because you've seen both ends of the spectrum where you got to be careful not to add this stuff, but then you end up, I mean, if you enjoy if you enjoy a sterile tank with artificial decorations and your seahorses enjoy it and that's what you want, that's awesome. But if you want a natural tank, literally some of the things said aren't that you can't achieve it if you go that sterile.
It's just for me, it just creates more work. I mean, I did consider doing a refugium when I was first starting out. I studied a lot of saltwater books, not just about seahorses, but about everything, reef tanks, all of it. And then I read specific to seahorse books. And I kind of decided against the refugium from the beginning, because from what I read about the seahorses, they really didn't need it. And it was so in depth, like you were saying, there was so many different ways to do it, to decide on it and then maintain it. It was more work and more in depth than I wanted to get at that point.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. And I will say that if you're looking for a lower stress tank, don't do a refugium. That's the bottom line. There's multiple benefits. If you want to do it and you're willing to take care of it, it can be beautiful and it can be like a whole other tank that you're growing macros if you love macros. But if not, if you're looking for simple, don't do it. And Zen said, I'm obviously not an expert saltwater keeper. She's an expert freshwater keeper. But from all my research over the last year or so, it seems that most seahorse people go sterile where it appears the reefers are more natural. Well, listen, I'm a seahorse person and a reefer and a freshwater person, and I've done it all. And I can tell you, I loved different things about different systems. So, I mean, like Holly said, it depends on the work you're willing to do. My favorite, I can still say this, my favorite seahorse tank was the macro one. It was gorgeous. It was work. I had to do work every day. I had cyano problems. I had to keep the macros happy. It required special lighting. Da 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 da. I loved it the best because it was gorgeous. I loved looking at it. I cared about the seahorses and the macros. Now I don't keep macros because I'm trying to breed. It just totally depends on what you want. And Salty said, what, Holly?
That's why I got rid of my rock. Rock is the worst to try to clean.
Yep.
And I started more the natural style, like reef style, when I started my seahorse tank. And I decided pretty early on that I didn't really like it because it was hard to clean up after the seahorses around all those rocks and things. And I do a lot of cleaning. After every meal, I'm siphoning out what they don't eat. And it just makes it easier for me that there's stuff that I can move around or send to the bleach bucket when I need to. It's a lot less work, is what I've found.
Hey, I am still here. I need like 2 minutes, guys. Apparently, my daughter was in a car accident, so I've got to take this phone call. Holly, can you just
Okay.
go with comments and chat for a minute, and I'll be right back.
For sure.
Thank you.
Hope
All right.
she's okay and all. All right. So Salty Reef says reef versus seahorses is a different world, especially for pests. And I agree. Basically, with the seahorses, there's a lot of stuff that they're sensitive to as far as pests that aren't as big a deal like in a regular tank of fish. For instance, bristle worms. When I had rock, I got bristle worms. And I guess for a lot of tanks, bristle worms aren't so bad. They're a good part of a cleanup crew for some people. Most people don't like them, think they're ugly, but they're not like dangerous, for most fish, but they are dangerous for seahorses. So, yeah, there's a lot of things. If you're trying to have seahorses in a reef style tank, there's a lot of research you need to do on what things will work well with them. And Zen Ginger says she is noticing that totally different information. And it is. So the seahorses, when you're keeping seahorses, what you read about them and what they need needs to override what you're learning about the reef stuff. If you find something that goes well together, something that likes the same temperature, the same pH, the same everything, then that thing's okay in your reef with the seahorses. But yeah, it's hard to find all that. And Zen, I think I need a sustainable seahorse build stream. I'm willing to spend the money and a good amount of time, but I don't want to have to mess with stuff every day. Yeah. I found the thing about the seahorses that I've found since I've been keeping them, I've had them getting close to 5 years now. And the thing that I've found about them over the years is that they are actually a lot more labor intensive than I ever thought that they would be in the beginning. Uh, they need multiple feedings per day. I'm used to having fish, like freshwater fish I've had, where you feed them once or twice a day. The seahorses, ideally, like Cheryl, I think, and Ray, feed like 4 times a day. I manage to
That's
feed
for adults.
3 times a day, sometimes 2 times a day if I'm away all day. There's some days I'm away and I only feed them once, but I try to get all 3 feedings in every day that I can. But beyond that, they have to be cleaned up afterwards. I have to get the siphon after they eat and make sure everything is siphoned out that they didn't eat, because it can cause bacterial diseases for them. So
Oh.
they can be labor intensive in that regard.
The other thing that a lot of people don't seem to understand about seahorses is they are a non-aggressive species. I mean, they'll fight with each other over mates, but they really lack the ability to become overtly aggressive in many instances and survive. They're not going to survive in a mixed reef tank. They're going to get killed, bottom line. And these are the kind of things that a lot of people don't understand about when they try to get into seahorses and think, oh, I can throw them in my reef tank. Mm-hmm. And you have to understand that crabs, other fish, other inverts, etc., can all prove lethal for seahorses. And that a lot of people that start out and think, oh, I'll throw some seahorses in my reef tank, and they've got tangs and all kinds of other stuff in there that are basically gonna kill the seahorses.
Hey, you guys, I'm back, but am I frozen? I feel like I'm frozen.
No, you're okay. You're crackly though. Is your daughter okay?
Let me fix the crackly because I got something to say real quick. So first of all,
You're breaking up again real bad.
do I sound better now?
Yes.
That's better.
Okay, sorry guys. I see Fish Fam Links is here. Thank you again. Don't forget, guys, Zen Ginger, I think, or someone posted a link earlier. All of the Seahorse Whisperer links are in Fish Fam Links, and that's a good place to find links of other good artists and good, resources for tanks and just see who's doing what. So go check them out. Second of all, I would say we're giving you the advice that based on our experiences. Again, it depends on what you want, but I hate when I feel like we make seahorse keeping sound so terrible, because the thing is, the reward is so much greater than the average tank. I swear to you, I've kept freshwater fish, reef fish. They all have their benefits. They all have their things, right? That you love. With seahorses, they are the only fish I've ever kept, aside from a dwarf lionfish, that act like a puppy. And most talked about personalities last week. We talked about personalities last week. I've got a seahorse right now, a male who doesn't like me or other seahorses. So he just goes and does his thing. Aphrodite doesn't like to swim about, so she kind of hides. But the majority of seahorses act like freaking puppies, and they interact with you, and they, bring joy to you almost. Like the tank brings joy. Yeah. So it's worth it.
As I say, Salty Reef says almost need to look at a seahorse tank as a species only tank.
Sure.
They have their own requirements. I've had everything from fish only to acrodominant reef tanks to seahorse tanks. And I have to say, the seahorse tank, there we go. The seahorse tank was my all-time favorite.
Exactly. I'm right there with you. And as we were talking about macros earlier, I've loved all my seahorse tanks. Actually, I said my macro tank was my favorite. Actually, it was probably the Barbori tank, just because, and they were the most difficult seahorse species I've ever kept, because they were picky. They wanted only food with eyeballs. I had to feed them specific. It was a pain in the butt, and I loved them. And they were my babies, right? So it just, if you want that, and people they're like, I still get people saying, you keep seahorses? Holy shit. And it's this cool thing. But don't do it for other people, do it for you. If you want to keep seahorses, if you think they're magical and amazing, and you're willing to give them what they need, meaning set up a species only tank or very few other things, and work with us to get the system set up properly, then no, you're not going to have acros and all the other stuff, but you're going to love that. I can't imagine not having a seahorse tank today.
A friend of mine who had it was like a 500-gallon reef tank, which was huge, in one room. He had a 250 reef tank in the dining room. And then he looks at me and goes, now this is something you've got to see. And I walked in, he took me into a bedroom, and here's a 100+ gallon tank that's got seahorses, pipes, and stuff like that. And obviously he knew what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing.
Sure.
And it was, I just stood there and stared at
the majestic, beautiful
tank,
yeah,
and was blown away. And I didn't even know he was into this. We were doing a club meeting at his house, and he goes, "You've got to see this." And when I did, I went, "Wow!" And he never told me about it beforehand or anything, and it was just like I was blown away.
Well, I'm going to say too, anybody who can keep seahorses, you're a badass, right? That's like, we talk about all the difficulties, and there are some, but you can do it. And when you do it, you mastered it, right? And then your seahorses, you have these new parts of your family. And I don't know. I love seahorses, you guys. I can't imagine not having a tank. So while we tell you all the restrictions and you should do this, that, and the other, and the fears, the reward is so great that
Mhm.
I have people at work that are like, "Oh, you keep seahorses. I really want to keep seahorses. Can you give me a seahorse? Can you sell me a seahorse?" And I'm like, "Well, you got to do this, that, and the other." And they're like, "Oh, that's too much work." But
Yeah.
my God, the reward
Well,
of
Yeah.
having
with,
seahorses
with,
And it's a lot of those people don't, if like Zen Ginger is saying, about getting under the stand and do maintenance on the tank or equipment. The Seahorse's equipment aren't going to be any different from equipment on any other tank, like salt water, fresh. Like if you're used to taking care of equipment, there's not anything different that you're going to run into with their equipment. If you learn your equipment and understand it and maintain it, you're not going to be messing with it every day like that, just like any
I,
other
I
fish.
love I love this the Salty Reef just posted. Yeah. I had a 125 gallon acro tank, absolutely stunning tank. But everyone that came to my house went straight to the 34-gallon red Seahorse tank. They loved it.
Yep.
Oh yeah, everybody loves the seahorses. I found that
I
kids. I have friends,
yeah.
kids will come over and I'll let them feed the seahorses with the turkey baster and they get a kick out of it.
And you can
Horses will come to them and they're friendly.
and Salty actually said too, the only other fish you've had with personality more than a seahorse was a puffer. I can say my lionfish, my dwarf lionfish, was very equal to seahorses because that dwarf lionfish came to the glass when I came home like a puppy, right? And he fed from my hand. And I mean, seahorses will do that too. They're just more interactive, they're more stoic. They don't maybe move around. They're not as active in the tank, but people can, feed them from their hand, and
Yeah.
they're freaking cool.
I
Okay.
have a goby like that, and he became that way from living with the seahorses.
There
I
you
feed
go.
Hold on. I'm going to tell you a story.
turkey baster because he learned from watching the seahorses that the turkey baster has food, and I
Right.
can't just free feed
Okay.
the goby because I don't want to get the tank messy. So when I'm feeding the seahorses, I get the turkey baster and the goby comes out of his little cave and
Yeah.
goes to the turkey baster and has his meal too. And he'll come out when it's mealtime. Most of the time he likes to sit in his cozy little cave, but he'll come out and look for me at
Yep.
about time to eat. And he'll be obvious. He'll come out and just look at me like, Mom, it's time. Get the turkey baster.
Yeah. Well, my favorite of all time, and I think I've brought this up before, is I brought in several young seahorses from a very reputable breeder. This was years ago. And there was one little female that was sent to me that would not go down and feed until everybody else had already eaten all the food because she was just shy and didn't like, and she was going to starve to death, basically. So I set up a little thing where I used a bamboo skewer and would put mice shrimp on the end of it and got her to go to the far back left corner
Wow.
to snick food. Okay. So this went on for quite some time. Of course, and she grew and got bigger and started becoming more social. The day I knew she had my number was the day that she was at the very right front corner of the tank, saw me walking up, and made a beeline for the back left corner.
Oh yeah, she knew.
Over the top of all the other seahorses.
Yeah.
And she didn't even hesitate.
Sure.
And I knew then that she had me trained.
But I mean,
They
that's
do.
the cool. That's funny, but that's the cool thing about seahorses is whether they're training you or you're training them, you end up with this
She
really
trained me.
unique experience. And one of the things that I think
Yeah.
Zen Ginger said earlier is she doesn't mind the feedings and the interaction with the tank. That's not
Yeah.
work to her. It's the maintenance. And if you set up properly, the maintenance is cake. It's
Not
not.
any different than any other tank. I
Exactly.
do a weekly water change. I change a third of the water in each of my tanks.
Yeah.
And every day I'm cleaning their skimmer
Well,
cup and changing socks. And some people don't even do that every day. I do it because it helps me remember to do it. I have to change the socks every day. Otherwise, I'll be like 3 days. Did I change the sock yet? Is it time to change the sock? So I just do it every
well,
day because I have enough of
Salty
them.
Reef, I saw your message. I will hit you up and we'll figure out the refugium stream.
yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
Well, one thing too that you've got to remember with seahorses is what do they digest? Somewhere between 33% of what they consume.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of it goes into the system as detritus.
Okay.
That's if you don't understand that basic principle in terms of keeping seahorses, you're probably going to run into problems because you're not going to be able to, unless you're really on top of your tank, you're not going to be able to keep it clean enough for them. And so, right there, they're more work than a lot of other species. But there are other species. I mean, there's all kinds of non-aggressive. In fact, I had
Wait a minute. Time out. Before you go on, let's back up and take apart what you just said. So you just said you have to understand that they not only eat more, but half of it turns into detritus because they spout it out. Is that what you're saying? Because they repeat what you just said.
Basically, about 30 to 33% of their food is actually digested and goes down the GI tract. They do not
Okay.
have a stomach. The
Right.
rest of the food that if you watch them and they snick something and as the jaw rotates,
Yep.
you can see the poof coming out of the top above the operculum.
Mhm.
And that's all the food, wasted food that they're blowing off the top that they're not actually ingesting.
Right. But all you're saying with that is make sure that your sump has adequate filtration.
Yeah.
Make sure you have an oversized skimmer. Make sure you understand that and that you compensate for it. It doesn't mean you can't do it.
Exactly.
It just means compensate for it.
Dead on there, my friend.
And however you do it is fine. You just need to keep their tank really clean.
Clean. Yeah.
However you do it,
change for it.
whatever equipment you use, or you're doing more water
Right.
changes. Like when I was raising fry, when I had my juveniles, I did not have a decent grow out tank for them. I had them in a 29 gallon and not the greatest filtration. So that all it meant was I had to do water changes every other day.
Right. Right.
A lot
But
of
then
like
Ginger-
months
then-
in the water, but it worked.
Right. But Zen was saying, I don't want extra work. I don't mind the feeding. I don't mind taking care of the seahorses, but I want the filtration to work. So that's what I'm going to focus on and come back to you next week and try to have an actual do's and don'ts list for refugium or for just a basic sump to compensate for everything we're talking about. Cracking again. Got it. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Well, and what is it your idea of work? Like how much work is too much? Because that's relative. That's different for everybody. What seems
Sure.
like too much work for me, somebody else might be totally willing to do.
Sure.
And has no problem.
For
with
me, it's water changes. I don't want to do more of them. That's it.
Me neither.
Right.
I feel like I'm already doing enough.
So I'm
Kelly,
all
you're now
about-
half
I'm
visible.
all
I can
about-
see your neck and your
Oh
shoulders.
yeah, you lost half your screen.
I did? Okay, hang on.
Yeah,
Where's
you're
it?
lost your
Oh,
face.
I changed the wrong thing. I changed the camera instead of the audio.
There you
Oh, you got
go.
to see my neck for a minute.
Yeah, but it also depends on, like I use the round nursery tubs. They're predominantly
Fry. Wait,
cleaning.
be clear. You use the round nursery tubs for fry.
Yeah, for fry.
Sure.
And by the same token, my typical grow out tanks have a total water volume of about 90 gallons each. And that's what I use.
Cheryl, wait. I have one because Cheryl, you give the absolute expert opinion and we appreciate it. But when is the last time you just kept a seahorse tank? Like just seahorses, not breeding, not fry, not grow outs. You just bought a pair of seahorses and you had them in a tank that you wanted just to be a tank?
Okay, I'm had trouble understanding you. You're still crackling.
Sorry, am I better now?
Yeah, you
Yes.
sound fine to me.
So what I'm saying is, like, I'm currently focused on breeding. So my tank isn't spectacular. My sump is ridiculously over. Well, I don't have a sump on that tank, but my skimmer's ridiculous. Like I'm focused on breeding. So that's a different system. When you talk about your tubs, that's a different system versus someone just trying to set up for a seahorse tank. They don't want
Absolutely.
fry. So, like, it's been a minute since you did that, right?
Yeah,
You've been
but
dealing with fry and yeah,
the flip side is how many people have 38 to 50 3-inch seahorses in a 58-gallon tank,
right.
which is, and I mean, it's doable. Yeah, I've been there, I've done it, but that's not something that the average person is going to want to do. And
Sure.
that's the thing is they have to accept the fact. One of the things that happens I found with people that starting out with seahorses, they get several and everything's going great, and then all of a sudden they have babies. Then they can't raise the babies because they really don't understand what it takes, and then they get discouraged and they may get out of seahorses. And I find that very unfortunate.
Frustrating. Sure. But a lot of people don't want to raise the babies, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just being honest, there's no right or wrong answer here. We need to absolutely provide the information so that people that want to raise the babies, because your seahorse, unfortunately, mine won't give me fry, but yours probably will. And,
Yeah,
yeah,
but what
know
I'm
what
saying
to
is
do and
I'm
be
not trying
prepared.
to.
But
Yeah,
if you
I'm not
don't
trying
care
to.
about the fry, you can set up a different kind of tank. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I'm not trying to chastise somebody that doesn't want to raise them. That's their decision. And I would rather see them keep their adults for
Yeah.
8, 10, 12 years than have them basically losing them every couple years and they can't raise fry. So I guess what I'm saying is there's truly nothing wrong with having a beautiful seahorse tank and not worrying about raising fry.
But when
Because
you want to, Cheryl's your girl because she
no,
will tell you exactly how to do it. And I mean, I'm serious. I would not have been able to keep Fry alive without Cheryl. Period.
yeah,
That's it.
Yeah,
it's
here.
I've had tanks. I can post photos of a 20-gallon nursery system with over 50 2.5-inch fry in it. But what doesn't show is the 59-gallon sump and the other 20-gallon tub that's next door that I've also start moving the bigger ones into over time.
Well, great point though. Great point, because that's why we do this stream and that's why we love these questions, is because, I really will work on this and come back next week and come up with a basic overall do's and don'ts for a Semper Refugium, because, there's so many different ways to do this. And I forgot what my point was. You made a great point, Cheryl, and I got lost thinking about what I was going to say. What
You're
did you
not a
say?
bad person if you don't try to raise the fry.
No, you said something else, and I was going to make a point about it. Oh, my point was, you see these amazing pictures online, and you're like, oh my gosh, look at that amazing seahorse tank, but you don't know what's underneath the hood. You don't know what's in the sump, and you don't know if those seahorses will last more than 2 months, right? So it's better to come someplace like this where we kind of work through all of it, and you got the different opinions. You've got Cheryl telling you how to do a sterile situation if you want fry. You've got me coming back and saying, you don't have to do that though, because you can do natural. You got Holly saying, you can do either, but if you don't want the work, here's
Go
what you
this
do.
way. Yeah.
So, I mean, different opinions, different situations,
Just,
different systems, but
I have to
it's
laugh
better
because
than a
sometimes
picture.
I have to laugh. Sometimes there's people such as yourself that really want to raise some fry, and their seahorses just aren't getting it on.
No.
And you're trying to figure out why. And then there's other people that buy a couple of seahorses, and 2 weeks later, they're overrun with several hundred fry, and they're like, what do I do with them? And that's seahorses being seahorses.
Yeah.
Sure. You know what I'd like to see set up, and I'm not promising to do it, guys, because I can't even get the dang website done. I will someday. But I would love to see set up a situation where this community, this seahorse community, grows and gets more connected with each other. Where if someone, I don't think there's absolutely anything wrong with someone not wanting fry. Like if someone just wants a seahorse tank
Hey,
and wants to have macros and wants to do different things with the tank and just doesn't care about raising the fry, they just want the seahorses. And those seahorses are going to probably give them fry because they don't want them, like Cheryl just said.
Yeah.
I've adopted broods.
Oh, wait. Wouldn't it be cool if we had a community situation where that person could call me and be like, you want these fry?
Say, I got some fry here.
Yeah, I need a pump. You want to trade these fry for a pump or whatever? And we can't do it over Facebook. Absolutely can't do anything live over Facebook. But I would love to see that happen because there's people like me that want fry. My seahorses won't give them. There's people that don't want them and don't want to feel bad about, okay, crackly again. Don't want to feel bad. Hang on, let me fix it.
Hey, I've adopted fry from other people that got seahorses and suddenly they had fry and they didn't have the heart to not raise them. And
Right.
so I've driven, many hours to go pick up newborn fry from people.
Yeah.
Because I know how to raise them. And it's not that basically I'm helping the people out.
Yeah.
And I'm also helping the seahorses.
Absolutely. I want us to do more of that.
Mhm.
Like I want us all to do.
It's one of those things. Most people don't have the tanks and the time. But I retired and I couldn't do it before I retired. But when I retired, I had the time to be able to make these drives and do this kind of stuff.
So why not have try to set up some sort of system where we've got so many people that the community can call and be like, hey, my seahorses had fry, I don't want them, and send them. And they have the facility that you have set up or
It's like
whoever.
you know enough to be able to raise fry. You would be a perfect person to take in
No,
somebody.
I'm saying multiple ones of us.
Yeah.
I'm definitely game. If you have fry and you don't want them, call me. I'll take them. But I'm saying, like, if we had multiple people like you and I that have the system set up, that have the equipment set up for fry, then the seahorse keepers that don't want fry could possibly trade for whatever else. Some sort of system. I don't know. I'll think it through. We'll come back to it.
Well,
But
it's something I've done.
what'd you say, Holly?
Seahorse adoption,
There you go. There you
or like
go.
a seahorse shelter.
Just like
Yeah.
like pups, right? Like maybe
Yeah.
I would be like, you can have the firstborn male back or something. I don't know, but we'll figure it out. But I just think it'd be cool because there is nothing wrong with whatever you want to do with your tank. We're still doing the right thing by seahorses. Captive breeding ensures that we're not taking from the wild. They're living longer in captivity than they would have in the wild half the time. And if we set up a system where any fry are being sent to someone who could raise them, come on, man. Seahorse swap, like Gina's Reef said. We're doing good things here.
Yeah.
I want to set it up. I'll figure it out. But anyways, guys, it's 9:37. I do have to work tomorrow. Holly's running this show, so she can stay live as long as she wants. But for the time that I'm here, what other questions do we want to chat about? Anything else we haven't covered? Open chat. So ask me to talk about the weather and I will, but I'm going to go soon. So I'm not doing the cutoff yet, but foster program.
I like that.
Right? Right? But Holly, you're the one they'd all be calling. Holly, I'm sending you my fry. Holly'd be like, no, I don't want no more.
I don't have the space. It was fun. I have to say, I enjoyed raising fry. I don't have the space to raise a lot of fry, like what they really need to raise big batches and stuff. But I've raised a few. like about 25 total in the end between all the batches I raised. And I enjoyed it. I think it's definitely worth doing if you want to try it, even on a small scale, but it is very labor intensive and expensive. So don't feel bad, I think, is
I
like
agree.
you were saying, if you can't do it, it is not an easy task. It's not for everybody,
Well, and
but
you're
it's
not like, and you're
rewarding.
wait, hang on. I want to make this point real quick because I think I did, but I want to just really hone in on it. You're not
Mhm.
hurting, like there's this big thing about seahorse
Yeah.
populations and conservation. You are
If they
not
don't all live.
hurting seahorses in the wild because you don't raise your fry. That
Yes.
is not a thing. You are not affecting their numbers. Obviously, that's common sense. But some people will feel that guilt. You should not. There's no guilt. You've already
Yeah.
done the right thing by raising and keeping captive bred seahorses to begin with, right?
Mhm.
So just wanted to
Yes.
say that. But anyways, Cheryl, were you trying to say something?
I couldn't hear you.
Were you trying to say something? Am I cracking again?
You sound okay.
Okay, next week, guys, I'll have the new computer. But anyways, go ahead,
I'm
Cheryl.
ready for a nap.
All right.
I know. I know.
That's
I'm
my
getting
cue.
tired too.
That's
I don't
my
have
cue.
that much to talk about this week.
Yep. Hey, guys, don't forget we already have an idea for another Whole Wine Wednesday focused on refugiums, where we're going to have Salty Reef and hopefully Zen Ginger jump in and ask questions and go back and forth. If you guys want something discussed, even if you join us later and you don't watch us live and you're watching this 2 days later, comment in the comment section. We read them and we can absolutely do a show based on what you
Oh,
want.
I just see Ray here now.
Oh, Ray, Dan does that to me too. You guys always jump in when we're leaving. Ray, you okay?
Well, I couldn't come sooner. The storm wasn't over.
Oh, you
Oh.
But
okay?
now my dog jumped down off my lap, so I guess she's more comfortable now that it stopped here about 10, 15 minutes ago.
You doing
Aw.
okay, Ray?
Sorry?
Are you doing okay?
I'm doing fine. It's the dog that has the problem.
I know. She's doing okay also now?
Well, not really. Like,
Sure.
the only thing is, like, we have no way to know how long she's going to live.
Mhm.
It's getting worse by the week. But
Oh,
I spent a hell of a pile of money, CT scans, echocardiograms, blood testing, and X-rays, and you name it. And I've already done. They can't do any more testing, and they can't tell me what the cause of this problem is.
Aw, poor baby.
So anybody who wonder, and Ray, I want to make sure you know we're still live as you're telling us this stuff. But anybody who
I'm on
wonders,
the laptop here, so it's hard to hear.
okay, so Ray's dealing with a lot with his dog, so that's what we're discussing here. And yeah, it's such a
Yeah.
shame. I'm glad
I couldn't help you a lot tonight anyway, because with me not having a refugium, I
Right.
don't have any experience to add to the topic like that.
Mhm.
But I was following along.
But do you think overall, Ray, that like do you feel like when we dive into these topics where we talk about don't do this and you have to be careful of this, and we dive in so deep into telling people all the fears that maybe people get afraid to just keep a seahorse tank?
Well, I would say that would vary with the individual. There are some people that might, but there are others that would just thrive on it.
So maybe the people that thrive on it are the ones who need to keep seahorses.
They're the
'cause
ones
they're
that would
like,
probably
"Want
end
me
up
to show
being more
ya?"
successful.
Yeah,
Mhm.
gotcha. Okay, I play devil's advocate all the time. You know me. But anything else you want to chat about, Ray, since you jumped in?
Nope.
Or
I just wanted to let you know that I had been following along, and I wasn't just taking the night off.
you're
Well, it's
But
nice
for
to
me,
see
my
you.
dog comes first.
hey. Until I start paying you, you're welcome to take the night off. But
Well,
I
you
would
won't pay
also
me now, do you?
But I would also say we just enjoy seeing your beautiful face, Ray. We would love when you jump in. You know that. So we're glad you're, kicking and that the dog is okay now after the storm. Not okay, but, doing better.
Calm down anyway.
Calm down. So,
I don't
but
know
I
where
am,
she's even gone right now. She might have gone out in the rain. It's still raining. It's just no thunder and lightning now.
and sorry to jump back, guys, but Zen Ginger said, I agree. I waver back and forth as to whether I'm qualified to keep seahorses, but the longer I stay and the more that I learn, the more I'm willing to take the risk. See, that's why I play devil's advocate constantly, because we're gonna help anybody with a problem, but you have to understand that the people that come and ask the question are usually because they have a problem. The 90% of other people keeping seahorses never have a problem, so we never hear from them, right? I mean that's just the nature of the beast. And you're a freshwater master. You're absolutely qualified.
Yeah.
If I'm qualified, you're qualified. There's no
Absolutely.
qualification.
Absolutely.
If you want to do it, let's do
Probably
it. Let's
a
figure
couple
out
years
how
from
you
now,
do it.
she'll be the expert.
That's right.
Right?
Exactly.
Yes.
You'll be doing Wine Wednesdays.
No, I went straight from freshwater fish to seahorses. I didn't keep other kinds of saltwater things before the seahorses. And it's a learning process. It's totally worth it, but yeah,
that's what you
just do
what
it, Zen
what you
Ginger.
just
You
said,
can do
because
it.
I kept a reef tank and other things in between, but I'm telling you, out of all the things I've kept, seahorses are my favorite. They're just so rewarding. So I just don't want anybody ever to be scared off or think they're not qualified. Anybody's qualified. We will help you set up right, and then you're golden. And if there's a problem, it's probably not your fault. And we'll figure it out and we'll help you. And, but chances are you won't have a problem because they're
They
not.
aren't harder
We
than other
focus
fish.
on the
They're
bad
just
a lot.
different. Yeah, they aren't harder than other fish. They're just
No.
different. So
Right.
it's probably better if you go straight to seahorses instead of to
Yeah.
reef and then to seahorse, because then you're learning what the seahorses need. You're focusing on that. And it's
People
much
like me
better.
that spent a long time in reefing thought they knew it all
Yep.
and got into it and found out didn't know anything.
Well,
Yeah, they are
like you
very
said,
they are
like
very
Holly
different.
said, like Holly
Right?
said, it's like Holly said, it's just different. It's not
Yeah, it
that
is
anybody's wrong. It's
Mhm.
just you learn reefing, you think you know about everything, parameters and everything, and then you don't understand, or seahorses are just different. Whereas if you set up a species only tank or you pay attention to the rules, like temperatures and what can live under a certain temperature, make sure you have heavy maintenance or mechanical and biological filtration, all that. That's why, Zen, I want you to walk through your setup with us as you do it, not just live, but like in videos, even on your own channel. We'll celebrate yours. But I want to show somebody. I'm not able to set up another seahorse tank. My family would kill me. But I want someone to start from scratch
Kelly?
and set up and
Kelly,
show a
you-
natural seahorse tank.
You need a 500-gallon seahorse tank.
Yeah, not going to happen. Not going to happen. But I'm just saying, I would love for people to share that and say, look, this wasn't as hard as everybody makes it seem. But it's because I'm not focusing on fry, or I'm not focusing on breeders, or I'm not, I want more of this, but I've paid attention to temperatures. I just think we could do good things together all the way around, if that makes sense.
I think if I'm ever going to use this again, I'm going to need earphones.
Sorry, Ray.
Uh-oh.
I don't even know if I can plug them in on this, but
We can shout for you.
Ray, I got to work tomorrow, so I'm ending it anyway. So
yeah.
We're so glad you joined.
Well, the only thing I've ever used this for was just to stream my granddaughter's hockey games when she was down in the States there. She had a 4-year scholarship at the University of Maine. And so I'd stream the hockey games, and I'd use an HDMI cable to hook it up to the TV. because this screen's so small, it's no good for watching a hockey game. But when I connect it to the TV, I could sit back in
Sure.
my chair here and watch it on the big TV.
Well, we appreciate you jumping in and letting us see your beautiful face. That's it. We're just glad you joined.
Yes.
Well, just
But
letting you know I'm still alive.
Hey,
Well, it's
we
nice to
appreciate it.
have you. Nice to see
Right.
you.
But now my daughter that had some car issues is now home, so I've got to have that conversation. So I'm gonna have to go either way. Holly, do you want to say
Yeah,
goodnight, or you want
I
to keep
think
going?
I think we're about done.
Okay.
I am. So
All right. Well, let's say Happy Wine Wednesday. I've got some chores for myself. For you, next week, Zen Ginger, I'll have some answers for you. I won't forget. Holly, remind me. And
try.
if you guys have a topic you want covered or a guest you want brought in, just let us know. They're Mom and me. I gotta go. Everybody say Happy Wine Wednesday. Happy Wine
Cheers.
Wednesday. Cheers.
Good night, all.
everyone,
Night.
Holly,
see
you
you
gotta end
next
it.
week.